The mysterious encounter of Fernando de Magellanes with 3-meter tall, that's 10-foot tall, giants in Patagonia, South America in the 16th century. In 1520, Fernando de Magellanes made time in his marine agenda around the world to stop in what is now Patagonia, where he met a giant on shore. This is a well-documented case of giants in Patagonia. Magellan ordered one of his men to make contact with him. The emissary's reaction would have been seen, but sadly it has been lost in history, and thus be sure that exchanging dances and songs would lead to demonstration of friendship. And it worked. The man was able to take the giant to a small island off the coast, where the great captain was waiting. The scene was described by a scholar during the day, Antonio Pigafetta, who kept the travel diary that later became Magellan's journey, the first trip around the world. And it writes, "When he was before us, he began to marvel and be afraid, and raised a finger up in the belief that we came from heaven. He was so tall that the tallest of us only reached his waist, and he had a deep and resonant voice." The illustration above demonstrates Patagonia was once inhabited by giants that dwarfed the celestial Europeans who came to conquer them. As they said, they were up to his waist. Okay, maybe that's not a perfect test, but it could be that people who found Magellan the Tehuelches were truly enormous, and that therefore this myth has some realistic basis. Let's remember, people at that time were very short. I remember when we went to on a trip to Boston, and we went on to the Mayflower, the copy of the Mayflower. We had to crouch in order to get into it, and that Mayflower was a copy of the Mayflower, the original Mayflower, and the copy was 25% larger, because the people at that time were only about 4 foot tall. Now, going back to this, on that small island, Magellan made his men give food and drink to the giant, and then made the mistake of showing him a mirror. The moment the giant could see himself, he was terrified, Pigafetta wrote. He jumped back, throwing 4 of our men to the ground. But once things had calmed down, the explorers proceeded to make contact with the rest of the tribe, hunted with them, and even built a house to store their supplies while they were still on the coast. After several weeks with the tribe, Magellan came up with a plan. He had to kidnap 2 of them and take them back to Spain to test these giants he had discovered. But this must be crafted carefully, otherwise the giants would have put our men in trouble. Magellan offered them all kinds of metal products to waste their time, such as mirrors, scissors, and bells, so that they would not mind putting handcuffs and chains on their legs. With which these giants were pleased to see these chains, not knowing where they had to put them. Magellan, however, lost his evidence during the long journey back to Spain. The giants did not survive. But what Magellan and Pigafetta brought back was that story and the new name of the land of the giants, Patagonia. Its etymology is not yet clear at all. Some argue that it means land of the big feet because of leg. Although most likely Magellan took the name of a popular novel at the time. Prima Leon was called and narrated about a race of wild people called Patagonians, giants in Patagonia. Although they let the British throw a jug of cold water on the whole thing, Sir Francis Drake managed to get in touch with some Patagonians, according to his nephew in The World Encompassed, written in 1628. Magellan was not completely deceived by naming these giants in general. They differ both in stature, greatness, and body strength, and also in the ugliness of their voices, but neither were they as monstrous and giant as they were represented. There are some Englishmen as tall as the tallest we could see, but by chance the Spaniards do not think that any English could come here to reprove them, and that makes them bolder to lie. For scholars, that was like an open sore, and quite rightly. According to William C. Sturtevant in his essay, Patagonian Giants and Baroness height of Nouvelle's Iroquois drawings, the Tehuelches were only a town of particularly sculptured people. While Magellan's subsequent trips measured Patagonia up to 3 meters high, 10 feet tall, others put them more at about 5'11". Popular interest in the Patagonians, the giants of Patagonia, vanished when scientific reports began to appear, writes Startavant. Some estimates of the 19th century or measurements of some individuals remain high, that they were over 7.5 feet tall. But better measures of the Tehuelche men were around 1.80 meters, perfectly reasonable for a human being, but totally unrepresentable for a giant. If we accept the lowest and least documented of these media based on the modern measurements of men, he says, the Tehuelches are, however, among the highest known populations worldwide, the tallest worldwide. In contrast, male Europeans, such as Magellan, in the 16th to 18th centuries would have measured in a lower range of 1.5 meters. His imagination, however, seems to have exceeded his small stature. But why was there such a difference in stature between Europeans and these natives of the end of the world? Animals, including humans, have a tendency to grow more in cold climates, grow and grow taller in cold climates and less in hot climates. This is known as Bergmann's law. With a large body, less heat is lost, and therefore it's better suited to survive temperatures below zero. So it's no coincidence that the world's largest terrestrial predators, such as the polar bear, live in the far north, while tropical creatures, which lose heat faster, adapt better to the suffocating jungles. And with evolutionary time, environments can exert the same pressure on human beings. Thus, glacial Patagonia natives would have grown, in theory, more than their European counterparts. Grown taller, of course. In a weak attempt to explain something without really investigating the issue, skeptics claim that giantism is probably the cause of many of the reports of giants in the Americas. However, they have never presented evidence for such an assertion. Giantism is extremely rare, so rare that there are no incident statistics for this hormonal disease. In the history of the United States, there are less than 100 cases of gigantism registered. In fact, today, the overwhelming majority of tall people who reach about 6.5 feet tall have no gigantic disorder. On the other hand, the percentage of modern humans that reach 2 meters high is 0.000007%. So how do you explain that? For example, the Smithsonian has by chance 17 skeletons over 2 meters high found in ancient burial mounds in a relatively small region of North America. This is on Infinity Explorers by Anshin Vastava. Please leave your comments, and thank you for your support. Support my Patreon account. The daily posts are 5 videos daily, and they are totally different from what I have on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your support, and that you find all my content so interesting. You'll find the Patreon account details in the description box below.